Hi, I'm Carolina Journal's Theresa Opeka. Here today we have Hal Weatherman. He is the Republican candidate for Lieutenant Governor in the May 14th runoff primary. And again, thank you so much for coming today. Appreciate having you here.
Thanks for having me.
Sure, thanks so much. So I want to get to know a little bit about you to start off, like where you're from, where'd you grow up, your family, degrees, offices you've held, things like that.
Sure. Well, I am Hal Weatherman. I'm 54 years old. Been married for 20 years to my wife, Michelle. I call her Shelley. We have 3 teenage kids. One's already in college. The other 2 are still in the home. And we live in Wake Forest, North Carolina. Okay. Some of your people that are watching would know or remember that I was Chief of Staff to your previous Lieutenant Governor here in North Carolina, Dan Forrest. And prior to that, I worked for his mother, Sue Myrick. She's retired now, but she was the first female mayor of the city of Charlotte and went on to serve 18 years with distinction in Congress as one of the most conservative members. And I was with her all 18 years, and most of that time I was her Chief of Staff. And but have it in my heart now to run for Lieutenant Governor myself. In terms of where I grew up, split my childhood between Charlotte and a small town called Elkin, North Carolina in Surrey County, which is in the foothills of the Blue Ridge Parkway. But I consider Elkin my home. You know, that's where my heart is. That's where I'll be buried one day. And but we've lived now in the Wake Forest area for about 14 years.
Yeah, yeah. Kind of like touched on part about like why you're qualified, and you're doing that now again. Correct? You're traveling all 100 counties.
I am. You know, I was obviously in a primary. I'm in a runoff now, but in the original primary, there were 11 of us running. I was the only one of the 11 that went to all 100 counties. We went to 35 counties 5 times or more. We went to 10 counties 10 times or more, and then we stopped counting. But again, I think it's really important. You know, I really think people out there are looking for authenticity. They're looking for genuineness, and you really can't show that over a TV screen or over a computer screen. You have to be face to face with people. And so my wife and I decided day one that we would run a campaign that would bring glory to God, honor to our family name, and that we would put the first fruits of our time, our money, our passion, all of it into traveling the state and meeting with as many of the people that I want to serve as possible face to face. And here we are, and that's what we're doing.
Great, great.
Yeah.
Now, some would call the Lieutenant Governor's role more ceremonial than anything. You preside over the state Senate. Would you like to change that, and how would you do that?
Well, I mean, it's definitely true that a lot of the power, we'll say, of the office of Lieutenant Governor was stripped for partisan reasons back in the 1980s. But, you know, they left some very crucial board appointments that I'm very interested in. Lieutenant Governor, yes, he's president of the Senate. He's the presiding officer of the Senate. But, you know, most importantly to me is he serves on the State Board of Education, and he serves on the State Board of Community Colleges. And I'm passionate about driving people into the trades. This is the message that I preach all over the state. And so I really want access to those 2 pedestals, because if I have the honor and the privilege to be your Lieutenant Governor from those 2 positions, I am going to do everything in my power to fundamentally remove the stigma that we as a people have put on men and women who work with their hands. I want to drive people into the trades. And so, you know, I like the office and the responsibilities that it has. Other than that, it really is an influence position more than anything. You are number 2 in state government. You can get your phone calls returned. And so, you know, the question is, for what do you want to have your calls returned for? And so, you know, again, I'm passionate about the trades. The other thing that people don't think, and they really should, is when you elect a lieutenant governor, you have to stop and say, hey, in the event, the unfortunate, you know, event of the passing of a governor, we have an automatic succession plan in North Carolina. Lieutenant governor automatically ascends to the governorship. 5 times in our state history, the governor has either died in office, been removed, or otherwise incapacitated. So that's a very real scenario that you have to think about. So you have to ask yourself, could this lieutenant governor, if called on to serve as governor, could he preside over 98,000 state employees? Could he be the commander-in-chief of the Guard, both air and ground National Guard? Could he commute sentences, pardon sentences? Could he have virtual unilateral control of the real estate assets of the state of North Carolina? Because in North Carolina, the governor does. And so these are the things people have to ask themselves, and a lot of people overlook that. It's the obvious, it's the elephant in the room. So, yeah.
Yeah. So, would you have a conflict or how would you handle if if you were elected, the other party, say Attorney General Josh Stein was elected governor, would you have a conflict, or could you work with him if you were lieutenant governor?
So, I've actually been in that situation. Again, I was chief of staff to your previous lieutenant governor. Dan Forrest's first term, we served under Republican. We're Republican. We served under Republican Pat McCrory. Second term, we served under Roy Cooper. Okay. I would much prefer to be under a governor of my own party where we share the same worldview and can work together strongly. All the projects that I lift up on the campaign trail that I say that I'm going to attempt to do if I'm elected lieutenant governor, all of them I believe I could accomplish regardless of who is in the governor's mansion. And so I think that's important to point out. I want to drive people into the trades. I also want to insert myself in the apprenticeship program here in North Carolina. I want to retool our apprenticeship program. I'm not going to talk bad about it, but if I compare our apprenticeship program to other states, Texas, Georgia, South Carolina, ours appears to be clunky, underutilized, not well publicized. I don't believe we use our tax incentives structures to incentivize companies to run their apprenticeship programs through it to create a more permanent pipeline. So these are projects I lift up that I could easily do regardless of who's in the governor's mansion.
Okay. So I've heard it twice now, and I know from the Lieutenant Governor's forum that they had earlier this spring, you mentioned education. Is that like from day one, what would you like to start getting accomplished? You had a 2-and-2 program, you mentioned that.
I do. Again, serving on the State Board of Education and the State Board of Community Colleges, I would like to create a new degree program, a partnership, if you will, between the community college system and our 4-year UNC school system, where it's, and it's not like the current articulation agreement, it's a little more specific than that. It's specifically aimed at the trades, where young people who do want to go to college first go to a trade school. They get certified, maybe a degree in a trade, HVAC, commercial welding, plumbing, electrical. Then they transfer their final 2 years to one of our UNC school systems. And there they get a degree in either marketing, graphic design, budget, finance, business. So they have all the tools to be an entrepreneur and run a business successfully. But it's coupled with the skill set, the trades, that I believe will make them profitable and self-sufficient the rest of their life. I have young people all the time come up to me because I'm at that age now where I'm old enough to be their dad. And they'll say, what should I do with my life? And I go through the same litany every time. Do you want to be the boss man? Do you want to be an entrepreneur? Do you want to own your own business? Yes. Do you want to make 6 figures almost guaranteed every year? Yes. Would you like to build a business from scratch that you could literally build it and sell the business as a whole 10, 15 years from now, make 7+ figures and retire? They're like, yes. I'm like, go be a plumber. Go be a plumber, right? Go be an HVAC, whatever it is. Go work with your hands. But see, our society for too long has put a stigma on that. And listen, I'm not against college, traditional college. I have a master's degree. I went to college and graduate school. I'm not against it at all. But we as a society have to stop what we're doing. We are pushing kids into a 4-year university system where they're coming out with, in many instances, useless degrees, like a degree in Egyptian poetry. They come out $100,000 in debt, and then they can't find a job. All the while, there are hundreds of thousands of jobs. Where all our tradesmen and women are dying out or retiring out or both, and there's no one to take their place. Yeah. Makes no sense whatsoever. And so I think we're on the tipping edge of that right now, as a culture. If I say Chip and Joanna Gaines, everybody in America would know who I'm talking about. So big, HGTV couldn't hold them. Couldn't hold them, they went over and started their own network. Yep. What are you watching? What are we watching when we watch Chip and Joanna Gaines on TV? We lift them up as celebrities, and we should. They're good Christian people, and I love what they do and what they've done with their lives and their career. But when we watch them, we're watching a man and woman do what? Work with their hands. Yep. But when it's time for our kid to graduate high school and what's the next step? Oh no, I don't want you to go there. You need to go over here and do this. Right. But I think we're so close to tipping as a society because I think people are starting to question what are the values of these degrees in the world today? And do they really function? And do they make our people self-sufficient? If you follow my campaign, I preach a message of self-sufficiency. I'm not following Twitter and whatever's trending, putting something out on the hot issue of the day. I'm preaching what's been laid on my heart. And what's been laid on my heart is prepare your people to stand alone as families, the family unit, to stand alone in a dangerous world, and to prepare your state to do the same. And so I don't believe we can do that unless we first, as a people, restore what I call the basic concept of the dignity of work itself. I think we've lost that. We've lost it as a society. And then to compound that, think of what's happened in our society. Over the last 3-4 years, our federal government's been paying man not to work.
Right.
You know, I believe God put man on this earth to work. Man is, I mean, I would say man, I mean mankind, man and woman. God put man on this earth to work because that is where we get our dignity from, our self-respect from. That is where we teach ourselves self-sufficiency. That is where we automatically train the next generation, our children, of what is expected of them when they watch mom and dad work and how we handle all that.
Right.
Shame on our federal government. Shame on our federal government to pay man not to work and deny him his dignity, his self-respect, his self-sufficiency, and the ability to properly train his kids. And that's, you know, I think it's going to create more than worker shortages. It's going to create more than supply chain management problems. It's actually going to create a very dark, deep spiritual divide in our country, and I would argue that is where we are right now. And so there's a reason why I push people, you know, when I push the issue of the trades. Because what I'm really trying to do is say, get back to the basics, get back to understanding that there's dignity and pride in working. Like if you want to be self-sufficient, this is how you go about doing it.
Yeah, yeah. So 2 other questions really quickly. So any other passion about education? We got that, and I know you started a charter school as well. Any other subjects or areas in state government do you feel need to be looked at, maybe revised, revamped? If you could just briefly touch on that.
Well, on education, there's the trade side of it, but the other side is the voting member of the state K-12 school board. Mm-hmm. You know, I believe the family is the basic building block of society. I think that family unit is currently under assault by the so-called woke agenda in every room it walks into. The boardroom, the courtroom, the hospital room, and most definitely in today's world, the classroom. Yeah. And, you know, I want to get rid of all these three-letter acronyms. You know, CRT, SEL, DEI, all these are the DNA of the woke agenda broken into its component parts. And in 9 times out of 10, attached to federal funding, pass-through funds that come through a state. And I want our state to be self-sufficient so that we can have the financial wherewithal to start rejecting some of this money. Because what we're doing is we're putting ideologies into our system. And like cancer, it metastasizes, it grows, and it's dividing us as a people. And I want us to get back to basics, the reading, the writing, the math. So, you know, yes, on the trades, I'm going to lift that up, but I also want to make sure that, you know, from a defensive standpoint, I want to stand in the gap and stand up and protect our families against these things, which I think are ludicrous in today's world. You know, the other items, you know, I want to bring transparency into our state government more than it currently is. One of the proposals that I've put out is I would like to create a master database through the Office of Lieutenant Governor. And this is a very monumental task, but go through every line item of our annual budget, or our budget, and every compile a master database of every contract that the state of North Carolina lets every year through all the different agencies. Because to my knowledge, no such comprehensive database exists. And then I want to go one step further. One, that's good in and of itself for transparency to see where our money's going. But the other reason is because, I mean, we have basically a $30 billion budget that we're spending. And I believe that we should spend our money here in North Carolina first on our own people. And so I want to work with the General Assembly to award preferential contracts. In other words, it's still competitive bid contracts, but I want to lift up in preferential status. Are you a homegrown North Carolina company? And if you are, we're going to treat you the same way contracting treats veteran-owned businesses or minority-owned businesses or woman-owned businesses. Now we lift up to that level of preferential treatment. Are you a homegrown North Carolina-based business? Because it makes entirely too much sense to me to say, if we're going to spend $30 billion a year as a state, let's first spend it within our borders on our people. Sure. And invest in our people. And so, you know, I'm going to lift up initiatives like that every chance that I get. Other than that, you know, I do believe that Mark Robinson will be the next governor of this great state. I certainly hope. I've endorsed him. I want him to win. And if he is there, I want to be a force multiplier for him. I really do. I think there's a reason Jesus sent the apostles out in twos. There's a reason for that. It makes sense to two people to come together for a big monumental task, to hold each other accountable, to help them, to encourage them, and to force multiply. And I would love to play that role for a Governor Mark Robinson.
Yeah. Okay. Last question. you know, someone's at the polls on May 14th, why should they vote for you?
No other candidate in my runoff race has worked harder. Like I said, I've gone to all 100 counties. I was the candidate who did that. 35 counties 5 times or more, 10 counties 10 times or more. There'll be no on-the-job training for me. No on-job training. I will be ready on day one. Here's some other differences. I have made a public pledge. I won't run the office from Raleigh. Yes, I'll have an office in Raleigh. Yes, I'll preside over the state senate in Raleigh. But I'm going to stay on the road. I'm going to stay on the road and keep my ear to the ground and be accessible to the people that I represent. I want them to always be able to reach me. I want them to know me. I've learned during this campaign, and if you can't tell, I'm a believer. So I believe certain things in certain ways. I've learned it's more important as I travel this state. It's less important what comes out of my mouth. It's more important that I have eyes to see and ears to hear what's being said to me by the people on the ground. And so I'm very sickened by our political climate today, consultant-driven, poll-driven, image-driven, 30-second soundbite-driven. And I'm trying to reject all that. I'm trying not just to win this race, I'm trying to win it in the right way and kind of start to break down those barriers that separate the elected class from the people they're supposed to represent. I am intimately aware that if I have the honor and the privilege to be the lieutenant governor, that you don't work for me. I work for you. And so I am interviewing for the job one county at a time. I'm coming to my potential bosses and I'm saying, I'm trying to show you, the Republican base, that if you award me the Republican nomination, this is how hard I'm going to work for you this fall and ultimately when I'm in office. And I think that stands out in the field I'm in.
Okay, great. Well, thank you. Hal Weatherman, a nominee, or actually I should say candidate on the Republican ticket for Lieutenant Governor on the May 14th runoff primary. Thank you, Hal, for coming in today and
Thanks for having me.
spending some time with us. Thanks so much.
Thank you.